Sound one, two.
Bringing us the podium.
Good afternoon, colleagues, friends, family, and everybody that's here this afternoon. I asked Dr. Mthethwa, is there anybody that I need to recognize? And she said, everybody. So welcome everybody. You are here because you have played some part in where we are today, which is the launch of Dr. Mthethwa's book called Student Participation in University Governance in South Africa. I also want to share with you a bit of the journey as to why I have the privilege of directing this really special event here this afternoon. So I am the director for the Research and Doctoral Leadership Academy at DUT, and it's linked to my focus area of gender justice, health, and human development. So the Research and Doctoral Leadership Academy, our aim is to support academics throughout their career and to get published, to get rated, and to, of course, publish books. Now, it's not easy. And let me tell you that Dr. Mthethwa is a very, very special person, and it was very special to work with her. Dr. Mthethwa is currently the DVC People and Operations at DUT. Now, any of you that have been in management, whether it's at a school or whether it's at a university, whether you've been a head of school, a dean, a deputy vice chancellor, you would know that it's very, very, very difficult to do anything outside of your key portfolio. Also, even if you're not in any leadership positions, once you have finished your PhD, you are just exhausted. So Dr. Mthethwa completed her PhD at UKZN in 2018. And her PhD was Students' Participation in University Governance in South Africa, and her supervisor, and he's still here today with us, was Professor Chikoko. And so thank you for being here today. So let me go back a little bit. So many of us, post our PhDs, we would like to convert our PhD into a book, but we don't have the time, we're exhausted, and we just don't get there. Even though many people that have finished PhDs are academics and they publish and write, Dr. Mthethwa is in an executive management position. And I try to think, do I know any deputy vice chancellor that in recent times has converted their publication or converted their PhD into a book? And I could not come up with any name at this stage. I mean, I know, when I was a dean and a DVC, I also know how really difficult it was to keep up with your academic output. So Dr. Mthethwa has done this. And it was a long, long journey, and it was really wonderful working with her. So she had the PhD. We put a call out that if anybody's interested in converting a PhD into a book, AOSIS, which is an independent publisher, will take various proposals. And she was one of the successful persons that AOSIS chose to publish a book with them. And it was a rigorous process. It's blindly reviewed. You have to rework with editors, authors, copywriters, and she has done this. So Dr. Mthethwa, congratulations. And she's a leader. She's a leader at DUT in people and operations, and she does that excellently. I also wanting to say a few months ago, Dr. Mthethwa, I was feeling like really down, just, tired of work and whatever. And you presented an input on your career and life trajectory. And it was really so motivational that I thought, wow, Cheryl, get your act together. And I'm a coach, but I needed that coaching, and you didn't even know that. So I am very glad to be here this afternoon, and I would like to also thank AOSIS who published her book, and you'd see in the book over here and that we at DUT and Radler, that this is a book project which was facilitated by Radler, which is the grouping or the division that I head at DUT. For any people that are in the audience that maybe are interested in publishing a book, that one would like your PhD converted into a book, you can get some information over here. I'm going to introduce our panelists when we start the panel. But I would also like to tell you how we got here. So we have our Faculty of Arts and Design are having a 3-day conference, and they had asked me to do the keynote on one of the days. And then I thought, but this would be a perfect space to launch Dr. Mthethwa's book. And I would like to thank Dr. Diana Moodley and the Dean from the Faculty of Arts and Design, who made this really happen, and it was really smooth working with you. And so thank you, Dr. Moodley. We wouldn't have been here if it was not for your engagement with us. Dr. Mthethwa, again, congratulations from Radler, from DUT, and really, we are proud of you, and you should be really, really proud of yourself. And I do wanting to say that in my engagement with Dr. Mthethwa, I have come to understand that she is really student-centered in her work and her philosophy. I thank you, Dr. Mthethwa. Dr. Mthethwa, you are welcome to come to the podium. You must not be nervous. I don't know why you are looking nervous. You're looking wonderful, beautiful, and please share with us your journey and the highlights of your book.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Pochita. Your kind words, your encouragement has really steered me to be able to be standing in front of all of you today. I also want to welcome the people that are streaming, because of the conference arrangements, we had limited seats for people to be here physically. So there are people that are streaming. There's probably more people that are streaming than there are people that are here physically. So I just wanted to recognize those people. So I wondered how to do this, and in fact, of course, I'm being baptized today. I've never published a book. I don't know what it is to publish a book, or what you're supposed to say, Professor Chikoko, when you are standing in front of people and there are people watching you online about this book. I'm also one of those, believe it or not, in situations like this where you are at the center of attention, are actually one of those who prefer to go under the table. So you will pardon me if I make a few stumbles along my discussion. So when we talked about the launch of this book, I thought that the best way to do it, which is really about which is what represents who I am, is really to get more people involved in the launch. Because it's not just about the book that you produce, it's about what you do with the book and take the information that you have in the book forward. So I've then said, in terms of the program today, I will talk about the book briefly, and then we will have a panel discussion, and our program director will introduce the panelists when that happens, so that you can then see why each of the panel members have been invited to engage in the subject of the student representative councils. Okay. Are the academic objectives of the SRC flawed? That is the central question that my book attempts to respond to. So, just to take you through in terms of my journey a little bit, I interviewed the SRC as far as 2015. 2015, the people will remember, it was just at the beginning where students were wanting to get involved in a campaign. The campaign was called #FeesMustFall. Do you remember that? So that campaign at that time would have made my research a little bit difficult because in general, the institutions that I attended, students were pretty volatile. I went to 3 institutions. Of the 3 institutions, there was only 1 institution where I felt that the student representative councils council there was embracing and were very interested in what I had to ask them. So, Akona, you represent that institution. We won't give it a name, but we'll say Akona at the time was the president, SRC president of that particular institution. Fortunately, it's where I started. When I went to other institutions that I did my interviews, it was very difficult. It was very difficult just to get them together, never mind to even respond to what I came here to ask them. In actual fact, at that time, I felt like a child trying to go to a parent, the parent being the SRC and me being the child, asking for a sweet, and the SRC being the parent saying, no, I'm not going to give you that sweet that you're asking for. And I'm saying, well, actually, I don't really want a sweet. I just want you as a parent to be there for me and explain what needs to happen in this environment. That's how it was. It was very difficult. One of the institutions that I went to, when I arrived, I had an appointment. All of them, by the way, I had appointments which were pre-booked probably about 2 months ahead. When I arrived, the SRC president was nowhere to be found. And then other members of the SRC met me. I had to wait for about 3 hours. I had traveled for taking a flight and then a long drive to get to this particular institution. When I got there, the president was nowhere to be found. Actually, in the end, that particular president I never actually got to interview. And the reason why I didn't get to interview the president was actually less about myself, but it was more about the partisan influence that the SRC members had. So there was tension between themselves because a third of the SRC membership belonged to one political party, the other third belonged to another, and the last third another. So it became very difficult. So the tension was very visible between them. The third institution that I went to, the president that I interviewed was at the time 32 years old. So I'm like, this is very interesting. Aren't you a bit old to be here? And it so turns out, as we were interviewing, that he'd actually been a member of the SRC for 3 terms. So he was really there for life. If you asked him about his education, there was nothing there. And his interest was to be in the SRC, his interest was to be there to fight. It was all about fighting, and it was so clear to me that the conversation, even though I had prepared questions initially, I had to try and steer him to get to my questions. It became very much a political conversation about the tensions that they were experiencing. So that was in 2015. During my interviews, I would have conversations in between that were about, well, management at the universities must listen to us. They must listen to us, because if they don't, we will burn the buildings. I would then ask, okay, if you are going to burn the buildings, what does that mean to your education? Are you going to progress, or what is going to happen? So they would then say to me, no, actually, they deserve this. So it was an us and them conversation, as opposed to we at this institution together. We are here because you are here. We are here because we want your education. So in that conversation, the narrative really helped in the sense that it really spoke directly to this problem that I had identified. Actually, before I even started the research at the time, I worked for a higher education institution that's where I first saw the issue, where to contest into the SRC, you have to have a particular academic pass rate. So different institutions use different levels, but the requirement to be a member of the Student Representative Council is that you must have passed the year before you join the SRC. But what intrigued me about this particular institution, which is where I worked, is that the minute the person became a member of the SRC, they soon forgot about their academic studies. And this is what saddened me the most, because I asked myself a question: why are you here if you're no longer interested in your studies? So fundamentally, student participation in university governance in South Africa, it was about how students who join the SRC, and as a result of them being a member of SRC, participate in university structures, governance structures, how do they balance their role in the SRC as members of the governance structures with their roles as students? This is fundamentally the key challenge that I found with the students. In respect of that, I specifically asked them the question about, what does your constitution say? How can you become exemplary students to the students that you are representing? If you are here to advocate for students in respect of ensuring that the resources are provided for them and they have the facilities to continue with their studies, what about you? Should you not lead by example, that when you're advocating for students, then others can see that in your advocacy, you yourself are an exemplary person in respect of your academic achievements? So that was essentially, as Professor Potgieter has indicated, the book really comes out of the conversion from my PhD. But one of the things from AEOS's perspective, in terms of to get to publish a book, they said, well, we hear that you've done your PhD, but to get to publish, one of the key requirements was that 50% of what you have done in your PhD you must lose. So you've got to find another new 50%. So in other words, for the purposes of this book, you can only take 50% of your PhD, but you have to then continue and find another 50%. So the book involves conversations with the SRC in 2015. It also involves conversations with the ordinary students, and this time during the COVID-19 lockdown. So while we were all locked down, I was having online conversations with students that were sitting at home. And the question there from the recipients of the support by SRC, which is the ordinary students, how are they seeing that the SRC is helping them? So the point of view of the students that were now sitting at home was dire. during that period where there's no Wi-Fi, there's no electricity, there's no drinking water where they live. They no longer have the privilege of the student accommodation that they had before. The SRC themselves are nowhere to be found. Actually, the SRC at that time were also struggling for their own livelihoods. So the question is, did the student body find support from the SRC during COVID-19? And the answer is no, simply because the SRC themselves were struggling to get Wi-Fi so that they can connect to their colleagues, the other SRC members, and also connect to the student body. And of course, the students are dispersed because they're all in their different homes. And of course, the struggle of their academic struggle will be about their ability to continue while sitting at home in confined spaces with their families, often in the rural areas without electricity. So they would have to walk for miles to try and get some connection so that they could get their studies. Now, if you compared the ordinary students of 2020 and you compare the SRC that are interviewed in 2015, basically what you see is that on the SRC side, which goes back to the heart of my issue around academic excellence, from the SRC side, sometimes you get into an SRC, but the reality is that once you are in there, you spend most of your time running around attending lectures, not lectures, attending these governance meetings. If you're not attending the governance meetings, students are calling you, and therefore your own academic progress suffers. A lot of the time, what I heard from the students, the SRC members, was that students would tell them that we voted you into office. So if we voted you into office, you best serve us. You better respond to what we want. So often you'll find the SRC, if they were not in a meeting, they will be in residence, but with other students asking them for this help. And usually it will be about students that do not have a meal, that have not been fed, NSFAS has not paid, and so forth. And therefore, if they don't have a meal and they have not eaten, it really means that they're not going to be able to focus, they're not going to be able to study. So the SRC will then have to kick in as a mediatory part to actually help them with that. Another element was at registration period. Registration period is usually the busiest period for the SRC because SRC is dealing with students either who've been excluded or students that are trying to get in, do not have access, or students that have traveled from far distances and coming here and standing in queues and really cannot get the registration to progress. So those are the kind of challenges the SRC that I spoke to shared. So my question was, for a small group of students, usually 18 to 25, depending on the size of the institution or the size as well as the type of institution, what can the SRC really do in terms of improving the well-being of the ordinary student? What can the SRC do in terms of ensuring their own academic progression while helping the ordinary students? Are they interested in the broader purpose, or is their entry, as I indicated earlier, an entry related to partisan interest with a hope for future opportunities in Parliament or through a political ticket that they started with? Or merely, is it about the SRC coming into office because for that particular year that they're in office, they are given allowances and stipends? There's an SRC budget. Just now we're speaking with the SRC president who told us a big sum of money that they have as their budget, which sum of money I don't even have in my office, by the way, President. So, President, when you come to my office, don't come and ask me for money. Rather, I will come to you and ask for money. So some of the challenges basically revealed by the SRC was the inability to cope with the extensive time commitment that was now required in their roles. Perhaps insufficient preparation and lack of understanding about their roles, because now you're in a role where you're sitting with professors and you get confused. Is this one a doctor? Is this a professor? Which one is a professor? Which is a doctor? And you are so confused, and even the conversation that is happening in those meetings is actually a conversation that's way above your pay grade at that point, because you don't really understand what they're saying, but somehow you need to contribute, but you don't know how. Or when you do contribute, you might be shot down by your contributions because the person that's speaking the other side, from the management side, might very well be your lecturer. So you prefer just to keep quiet because you can see you've identified your lecturer in Senate and the lecturer has made a comment. You cannot get in Senate and rebut your lecturer, because guess what's going to happen to you when you do? Of course, the issue of vulnerability to student demands against the fact that, as I indicated, they were elected into office. So students will demand, but sometimes the demands you can't fulfill. Whilst also spending extraordinary time in meetings, more often not understanding what is being said. Another problem that they said was that bunking class and seemingly finding spaces more interesting, and actually going into those meetings was an excuse for avoidance of the books. Fatigue. Okay, that one is a big one because they just were exhausted. You know, if their day started at 6 o'clock, their day usually finished at 2 a.m. So they'd barely have 4 hours to sleep before they start again. Because by the time they get to residences, the other students are waiting for them. At 11 o'clock at night, they're now into the next problem, which is the problem of self-study, because there's nobody else to teach them. So some of these things that I learned from the students, actually, when I reflected, I realized that some of those things are things that we, in the management side, could do something about. We could do something about helping the SRC in terms of avoiding their self-study by giving them tutorial notes or giving them something to support them, because they spend so much time in these meetings. Another revelation, big revelation, was from the discussions with the SRC was, is it better to have an SRC member or somebody join the SRC at undergraduate, or is it better at postgraduate? It was clear that postgraduate studies, if a person became a member of SRC at postgraduate, it would be much better. One, they're more mature. Two, postgraduate studies doesn't require you to be in lecture halls like undergraduates. Undergraduates, you are regulated by those lecture times. At postgraduate, in the main, you are doing research, so you can actually navigate your time in terms of that commitment to governance and also commitment to your studies. The other thing is that the Constitution itself doesn't lend itself for the SRCs to actually study. Because once they're in the office, there's nothing in most constitutions that I looked at that actually tells or compels an SRC member to continue and pass. In other words, to continue with their academic studies while they're in office. There's nothing in most of the SRC. It could have changed by now. I'm hoping it has. I haven't looked at that more recently, but back when I did my research, most constitutions were still very rigid. It was merely about passing as a gate entry, and after that, you don't have to. But I dare say, even though there were those problems with SRC, there are, and there continue to be, very good and strong SRC members that actually do continue with their studies. Okay? What I'm trying to demonstrate here, most importantly, is that when you join the SRC, you are actually a student first, then you are a member of the SRC, not the other way around. And you should not forget that as a member of SRC, while you are there in the first place, that you are required to be a student to be a member of SRC. And most importantly, the SRC's role is to mediate for students, but at the same time work with the universities, or management rather, because a university is actually not a university if the students are not there. A university is a university because of the students. So it's important that management and students work together. In the book, I make the point that education is the passport to an improved life circumstance. And so if that be the case, then it stands to reason that we'll have to do whatever it takes to ensure we encourage that education to continue. The book does not cover a particular aspect, though, which happened, I found, during COVID-19. That aspect was one which probably would be for another book, where there was lots of cheating. Online tests, actually, for the period of 2021, we are still questioning some of the universities. We are questioning some of the graduates that we have from that period, because there was a lot of cheating that happened in terms of the exams. In fact, before COVID, when students were encouraged now, or were forced or compelled to go and sit at home, they didn't want to. When they got used to sitting at home, and when they were being asked to come back, now there was a big fight. In fact, in our institution, we really struggled, even last year, which was 2022, where students just didn't want to come back because it was more convenient. They soon found a way that if they are studying online, actually they can get a degree fairly quickly without having to work very hard for it. That's a story for another day. So the themes that the SRC revealed is the dependence on partisan alliance, the de-link between their roles in governance and academic objectives, the importance of maturity, as I indicated, postgraduate versus undergraduate, studying alone being very hard. And then I just say the book attempts to bring students to the center, especially the SRC themselves. And for me, why this book was so important, and I would do whatever I needed to do, was to get a message out there to say that ultimately, whatever it is that we are doing now, we have to make a difference. As adults, we have to try our best to make a difference to our youth. We have to contribute as much as we can to our youth to propel their continued studies. And ultimately, the students that we support, we want them to, beyond their education, to be our future captains of industry, and ultimately, genuinely to be improving our country in all its spheres, particularly the socio-economic prosperity that we so desperately need. So there's more that I could say about the book, but in essence, I've touched the highlights of the book and touched exactly what the students were saying to me, and some of the findings that I found through the conversations with the students, and also my personal thought process in terms of what is needed to be done. But with that, I just want to say thank you very much for gracing this occasion and joining me in celebrating this achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mthethwa. I'm sure there's lots of questions that they would want to ask you, and now you've also got some insight into the challenges and how she overcame it when she was conducting her research. So you might have noticed that when I opened and did the introduction, I didn't read the bio of Dr. Mthethwa. That wasn't an oversight. I thought that I would read it before, just now at this point when I introduce the panels section, but also for people that have, I was hoping, and it has happened that people have come in a bit late, so now you've heard what she said about the book, and I'm also going to let you know a little bit more about her. Very often when we're family and friends of a person, for example, like Dr. Mthethwa, we know them at another level and we don't know them professionally. But of course, the professional is personal, it's political, and there's an engagement between all three of those identities. I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce the panel, but before that, I'm going to start with Dr. Mthethwa. So Vuyo Mthethwa holds a PhD in student governance, and it was conferred by the University of KZN in 2018. Her prior qualifications include a Bachelor of Social Sciences Honours, a Master's in Industrial Labour Studies, and a Certificate in Labour Dispute Resolution Practice, and she received that with distinction. She has over 30 years' experience in human resources, both within private and public sectors, and she established and ran a consulting company for 20 years. If you look at her, you'd think she started all of this at 12 years old. So additionally, Dr. Mthethwa continues to serve on several boards. She is passionate about student development and success, this resonating with a conviction that students are our future, and it is critical to explore ways to assist them in advancing their careers and ultimately opening opportunities. So while she was doing this book, she was doing a lot of other academic work, and that's also over and above, of course, an everyday position at DUT. So Dr. Mthethwa also presented a paper at Queen's College, Oxford University. She also authored and co-authored academic research papers on student governance. In 2021, while working on this book, Dr. Mthethwa contributed a chapter called Student Governance and the Academic Minefield during COVID-19 lockdown in South Africa, in a book that was titled Assessing University Governance and Policies in Relation to the COVID-19 Pandemic, and it was edited by Professor Mansour Alia from Alia University in Bahrain. Her research activities have continued, and I can vouch for that, because I know that, despite the magnitude of her responsibilities in the various roles she has held within higher education, including lectureship, Director in the Vice-Chancellor's Office, Senior Director, Human Capital Services, and most recently, her current role, which she currently occupies as Deputy Vice-Chancellor, for short DVC, People and Operations at the Durban University of Technology. Please join me in giving a big stand-up clap and recognition of Dr. Mthethwa's achievements. Thank you, colleagues. So the panel was put together with the preciseness and the attention to detail, as Dr. Mthethwa does in everything she does. So maybe where you're sitting was certainly thought through. Who is on the panel was very clearly thought through. And they will all contribute to, of course, the discussion. So the panel discussion is going to be a discussion about the book, but also about student governance in general. And the panel is going to be chaired, and you should not be hiding there, Professor Mahende. It's going to be chaired by Professor Phumlani Mahende. So Professor Mahende was a previous colleague of mine at another university, and I really am delighted to introduce you to him. He is also one of the younger professors in higher education. Professor Phumlani Mahende holds a PhD in Education Management and Comparative Education, obtained from the University of Free State in 2014, and a Bachelor of Education Honours, and a Masters of Education from UKZN in 2008, 2009 and 2012. Now, people take very long to complete a PhD. The average is like way over 3.54 years. So Professor Mahende completed his PhD in record time. Am I correct that you took 2 years? Yes, and it's a really good PhD. I want to recognize him as a young black academic professor that has made huge strides in academia. He's currently an associate professor in education leadership at UKZN. I'm going to skip some of the detail. They can Google you. He teaches modules in education leadership and management, and he supervises postgraduate students, and to date he has supervised to completion 4 PhD students, more than 20 master's students in education, and more than 20 B.Ed honours students. Since his time as a student and in his current role as an academic, Professor Mahende has been involved in different leadership roles. He is currently a member of the School of Education's Management Committee at UKZN and has served as an academic leader for master's studies for 2 years, and is currently an academic leader of research and a chair for the School Research and Higher Degrees Committee in Education. He was also part of the SRC at UKZN. He was involved in leadership as a student of the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He became a member of the SRC 2007 to 2008 and occupied the portfolio of sports, arts and culture. He also led different clubs and societies, but actively became part of the Community Development Association, CDA, where he led as Director of Sports, Arts and Culture in 2007, and Deputy CEO Public Relations in 2008. As an academic, he served as the Secretary of Education Management Association of South Africa from 2018 to 2020. From 2015 to 2017, he served as a Research and Development Officer for the same organization. I wanted to read all his achievements so that we can recognize his contribution to higher education and communities, but also why we have asked him to chair the panel today. So welcome, Professor Mahende. I am now going to move to the person that supervised Dr. Mthethwa's PhD, Professor Vitalis Chikoko. So Professor Chikoko is also at UKZN. But let me also share with you, over lunch he said Dr. Mthethwa is very stubborn, in a good way. So I said, no, she's not stubborn, she's assertive. And then we both recognized that we're both a little bit stubborn, but also assertive. But we must also always call men stubborn, because very often men are assertive and women are stubborn. But Professor Chikoko, thank you for being here. The fact that you're here as a supervisor shows that your relationship is a good one. Many students don't talk to their supervisors post the PhD. They don't want to see them. It's a divorce. So you have done really well. And so Dr. Professor Chikoko is very understated. I know that because I worked at UKZN when he was there. And he's got a very short bio, that he's saying to us. He says that he's a professor of educational leadership in the University of KZN. He's proud to have supervised Dr. Vuyo Mthethwa's PhD thesis, out of which the book we celebrate today was born. Thank you, Professor. I'm now going to introduce Mr. Zoleka, who's the current chairperson of DUT SRC. I'm really happy that you are here. And he is a postgrad student at DUT, and he holds a diploma in business law, and he's currently pursuing his advanced diploma in the same field. And as I mentioned to you, he's the Student Executive Council President, and he's going to be the President of the SRC for the next 2 years. It's a 2-term. So I was saying to him at lunch, Professor Mahende was also a student leader on the SRC, and then he was like fit and thin like him. And you know what the years do in terms of leadership. Welcome, Mr. Zoleka, and really, really thank you for being here. I have no doubt that he's a leader. You don't just become a chairperson of the SRC. I've just engaged with him a little bit, but I think he's a quiet leader, but I'm really looking forward to the engagement here today, but also to see how he leads. It's not easy in higher education at this stage. So thank you, Mr. Zoleka, for being here. Then I'm now going to introduce Ms. Okona Landu. So Ms. Okona was also involved in assisting Dr. Mthethwa with the collection of her data. Okona Landu is a trailblazing force as an innovation and brand change manager, and this is an Italian word that I struggle with, at Diageo in South Africa. Her academic prowess boasts an honours degree in information systems from UWC, the University of Western Cape, supplemented by a postgraduate certificate in leadership from the Gordon Institute of Business Science and a postgraduate diploma in packaging from the Institute of Packaging, South Africa. Her excellence continues with her ongoing MBA studies at the Regent Business School. She made history as the first female president at UWC, where leadership was put to test during the hashtag Fees Must Fall movement in 2015 and 2016. One of the remarkable achievements was the conceptualization and implementation of Ikamvuletu, our Future Fund, a groundbreaking initiative at UWC. This visionary project aimed to support academically deserving students in successfully completing their studies, showcasing Okona's dedication to fostering educational opportunities. Consistently, whether in a capacity as a student leader or an innovation manager, Okona embodies 3 key attributes: leadership, motivation, and the facilitation of change. Her passion extends to sustainability, evident in her commitment to environmental conservation through her work in the packaging space at her current organization. Her drive to contribute meaningfully to the planet aligns with her broader commitment to making a positive impact in society. She continues to inspire and drive change, leveraging her diverse skill set and unwavering dedication to create a more inclusive and sustainable future for all. Thank you, Okona. She and I share a similar alumni. I have a PhD from UWC. Welcome, Okona. So we have Dr. Ntuli, whose bio I don't have. Can you pass it to me? Did you WhatsApp it to me? Okay. Oh, I've switched my phone off. So while I'm switching on my phone, I'm sure a number of you are thinking, could you publish a book? Do you want to publish a book? Do you want to do a PhD? We'll talk afterwards or talk to Dr. Mthethwa. Dr. Ntuli is a student development practitioner at Mangosuthu University of Technology. He has a PhD in higher education, student activism and university governance, and it was conferred in 2020 from UKZN. I know that because you spoke to me earlier. He was also part of the Erasmus Mundus Scholarship Student Exchange Program, and he was a PhD candidate, am I right? University of Tampere in Finland. Welcome, and I have to say it's not that he sent his bio late, is that we had asked him slightly late because we knew how busy he was, and so thank you for stepping in. It was all managed by Dr. Mthethwa. So I am going to pass the director's space to Professor Mahende. And what is going to happen is that people are going to have a conversation, the panel, about the book, about the journey. It will be some questions, conversations, and Dr. Mahende will also then take questions and engagement from the panel, from the audience. Dr. Diana Moodley, you saying something to me? Okay, so the panel will be, it will be for maybe, it's now 4:20 to maybe 20 to 5, quarter to 5, or 10 to 5. Dr. Moodley is saying that there is another event in this room, but of this, we'll also serve some snacks for you after the event. And you then more than welcome to continue the panel discussion or whatever discussion you want to have after that. But thank you. Dr. Mahende, over to you.
Sanbonani, Ninjani. I know that academics most times are very serious, and I see there is a seriousness in the house. Just relax. We are here to celebrate, but also to discuss a topic that I think is close to the hearts of many of us here, especially those who have been SRC members, those who have children who are in universities who aspire to be SRCs, and those who are leading universities who want to make sure that our young people participate in SRCs but also excel academically. Like you, Dr. Mthethwa, you have put me on the spot where I'm going to be baptized, because though I am a professor, to be honest, I've not facilitated a session of this nature. But maybe before I go to what I'm required to do, let me indicate that the key question we want all of us this afternoon to respond to is how does SRC achieve its own academic objectives while advocating for students? That is the broader question that this afternoon the panel is going to respond to, but also you as the audience are required to contribute to. In the reading of my bio, you did hear that I was part of the SRC. Prof. Potgieter, I got in the SRC, I was thin, short, When I left the SRC, I was still like that. I'm not sure if SRCs these days live. I would like to see you, Zolega, after 2 years from now and see if you'll be of that size. Very quickly, I want to share one experience with you that happened when I was in the SRC. It was the second semester of 2008. I was holding the Office of Sports, Arts and Culture, but because I was very close to the president will now and again deploy me in the space of the academic and transformation to represent students on the academic matters. So here was a student who was coming to the university for his fifth year. Bachelor of Education is 4 years, but he was coming for his fifth year, it's second semester. He knew in his fourth year that he has failed some modules in the second semester. But when NSFAS was opening applications, he had not applied. So he comes back to the university in the fifth year. He should register for the second semester. He doesn't have money to register for the second semester and is in the SRC office asking the SRC, how can the SRC help? Yet this is a person who knew I have failed second semester modules that I need to complete. So the president asked me to take the student to the dean, to have a meeting with the dean and see if we can help the student get an NSFAS package in the second semester. So as I walk with the student who was, I think, 2 years or 1 year older than me at the time. So for me, unfortunately, when I represent a student, I always first told the truth. I will tell you if we're going to the management and tell you that, you see, we are going there, but this case, this is the likelihood of winning it, or this is the likelihood of losing it. So I said to him, my brother, I'm going there to represent you. But before I do that, I need to tell you the reality. It's irresponsible of you to know that you have failed modules in the second semester, but you did not apply for NSFAS. Now we are going there for something that you do knowingly. I didn't go to that case because the student, after saying that, he wanted to beat me. And I was small in that way. Why am I sharing this experience? I'm sharing this experience to highlight to you very quickly that at times, SRC members are in a space where they have to represent students, even when students are at wrong. And the question that I hope the panel will address later on is, should student representation be about advocating for students even when students are at fault, or it should be about ensuring that the space of the university is conducive for students to learn? I want to only capture that as part of my experience. And quickly ask a question that maybe might be obvious, but I'm sure the people here and the panel members might have different views. The first question that I'm going to ask, and I'll ask the panel members to respond and maybe not respond to the question, but address the key issues that might be directly highlighted in the question or not directly highlighted. Should students be represented in university governance structures? And if they should, what contributions can or do SRCs make in these structures? I'm not going to ask who's going to start. Anyone can just start.
Thanks, Prof. I think by virtue of having the mic first, I'd speak to the question. And I think your question around whether students in the first place should be represented by SRCs, yes. And this is part of my reflection from both my terms in the SRC, in that there's a collaboration requirement between understanding how students gain access into university, but equally also how do you ensure that once those students are in the system and they've gained access into university, propel them to be successful in exiting the university space. And representing students is a holistic aspect, not only which I think SRCs come to be known about, just representing students in terms of financial exclusions, in terms of academic exclusions, but the holistic experience of being a student requires student involvement themselves. And I don't think it would be feasible to request a student body of about 22,000 to give input into what that experience is. And I think the SRC, along with some of the roles that they have, that is a key role that they have in terms of what is the overall experience of a student. And this speaks to what is the setup of a lecture hall. This speaks to, are lecture halls friendly for students that are particularly maybe blind? Does the method of education allow for students to be successful? So I think most times SRCs are known to only represent during times of registration, during financial exclusions, but I think the broader role of the SRC transcends to the entire holistic experience of students, and they've got an input to share with the university management in the different forums. And I know universities have different sets of, I think at the time it would be committees. And I know there's a student development committee, which is a key committee that looks at the overall experience, hunger of students on campus, sanitary provision of female students on campuses. And I think by virtue of just that the SRC has a key role in terms of representing students at a governance level.
I made a mistake. Can we at least 3 minutes per person maximum in each aspect that we are going to deal with?
Thank you, Dr. Mende. Now, already Sis Akona has spoken a lot. Now, I think we must look at this question in this context as to say, what would institutions look like if there was no representative body for students? Now, firstly, we must look as to say, what is the role of the SRC? The SRCs play a vital role that is known. They represent students in different structural bodies of the university. They are the ones who aim to control chaos in the university. Now, imagine if there was no student representative council at the university. Who was going to sit on behalf of students in structural bodies that seeks to discuss issues pertaining students? Those structural bodies are, maybe if I can count few, we have Senate, we have Institutional Forum, SSP. If there was no SRC to represent students, then it would mean that each and every student must be present in those meetings. It would mean that each and every student must be given a venue, like sports centers, to say they are going to be addressed, they are going to contribute. Now, I think the question, to answer the question, yes, students need to be represented in universities. They need the SRCs to, address their issues as a primary platform for students, because SRCs are primary platform for students, of which they can voice out their concerns and grievances so that the SRC can take them to the structures of the university.
Oh, thank you very much, Program Director. I would like to take this opportunity to greet everyone in the house, observing all the protocols. My take on this is based on the premise of a democratic space where there is democracy. That in every democracy, there must be a stakeholder representation. In as much as workers may be represented, in as much as academics may be represented, students equally require that representation. This is done particularly to institutionalize processes, to streamline processes, and to ensure that there's a systematic way of running universities. Because without representation of each and every stakeholder in the decision-making processes of the university, there'll be total chaos. I know the two previous speakers that have spoken before me have indicated that chaotic part that could happen. But I also see the SRC as a student council that should be at the forefront to promote the academic excellence. In other words, someone must lead that process. That's what leadership is about. Leadership is about someone influencing, inspiring others to aspire, to achieve a particular goal, to achieve a particular vision and a particular mission. But it takes a leader to do that. And then the leader will have the followers, which is the student body. That means the leader will represent the followers in the processes or decision-making processes that need to be undertaken at the university. So yeah, in summary, yes, student must be represented, and that will ensure that as a stakeholder group, as a constituency group, their voice is heard. And in addition, when we look at students, we don't see students in front of us as they are, but we see them beyond. Because these are future leaders. We are preparing them. Sooner or later, we're going to retire. And when we retire, if there is no leadership that is ready to take the baton and continue, then the country is in crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mthethwa. Thank you very much, Vuyo, and I want to thank you for having brought your children here. It's very important to bring them on board. For those of you who don't know her children, in the second row there, you can even see the shapes that she also brought her sister here and probably other relatives, I don't know. Thank you very much for doing that. I think that I don't want to dwell too much about whether or not students should be represented. I think that my colleagues have already touched on that. But just one or two sentences. The university is a miniature society. And in any society, people, a democratic society, people must engage. People must be involved. But going deeper, a university is an organization. In any organization, there are issues of power, and there are issues of resources. Where you have resources involved, there are always issues there. So the way to deal with it is to have representatives of the different constituencies. But I want to say more about what must happen in there. Often we hear about the SRC wanting to have their concerns heard. I have no qualms with that, but I don't think that's the end of the story. As we speak, this country, this government is telling institutions to say there are going to be budget cuts. So where there are budget cuts, universities are not going to be exceptions. So, Mr. President, when you get in there, over and above saying these are our concerns, I have two types of success that I want to see from you. Your academic success and institutional success. What are you bringing on board to have this institution succeed in the context of budget cuts? If this cake is not going to be enough for your academic year, then you have to shift your attention from simply wanting to shut doors and to break some of them, to shift towards how more resources can be brought on board. So I'm challenging SRCs to recast their agendas. We used to, well, when things are broken, the assumption is that they are going to fix them anyway. But with budget cuts, with economic problems, there will come a time when what you have broken can no longer be replaced, because the money is no longer there. But the young people, of course, when you tell them, they think you are crazy. How can they not replace? They must replace those glasses. So I am, in short, saying the job of the SRC must be multifaceted. Yes, let's talk about your concerns, but yes, let's make history so that when you leave DUT, you are able to say, during my tenure, I was able to bring X number of resources that built this, that, and the other. Thank you.
Thank you, panel members. I want to switch a little bit, and Vuyo has given me power to run this the way I want. You have heard from the panel members, they are saying, and I indicated that this is maybe not debatable, but what contribution can they make? That is coming out, and it's also coming out that beyond just representing students on academic exclusion, financial exclusion, SRC members should or are there to champion a number of interests for the students, ensuring that their social needs as they are in the institution are taken care of, and also preparing these same students who are in the SRC for the country or the world beyond being a student at the university. When I was in the SRC, we were all known for not performing, in such that today when I tell people that I was once a member of the SRC, they say, and you are a professor. So there is that a notion and belief that once you are in the SRC, then your academics will suffer. Which is taking me to the next level, but I want to not start here. I want to go this side very quickly and say, how can institutions, while creating the space for students to be leaders, ensure that the institutional objectives, which is producing students on one hand, is achieved within the context of the SRC roles? Maybe shortly, how can we ensure that in the presence of SRCs, the institutional objectives are achieved? I don't know if there is any taker this side, but I want to go to this side for now.
Thank you, Program Director. Maybe where we should start is where we try to find out what student leadership is. What I mean is that we shouldn't confine student leadership to the SRC, because the SRC is not student leadership, it's part of student leadership. When it comes to student leadership, you involve mentors, for example, probably senior students who are providing mentorship to other students, class reps. In some institutions, they have faculty councils, they have postgraduate councils. All those people, they play a particular role when it comes to student leadership. In actual fact, student leadership involves even people in clubs, sports clubs, you know, because we say students learn not only in the classroom, even outside the classroom. There's a role that is played by sports clubs. The soft skills that you might not find in a classroom situation, you find it there. If you're a captain of a soccer squad, there's something you learn, and you'll apply it elsewhere, particularly when you join the world of work and life, in communication, confidence, and so on. So the SRC is there at the level of leading all those particular structures. Institutions cannot function without, we had that conversation earlier with some SRC members, and they were saying if we have issues with NSFAS, we go to the institution, and I'm saying, what do you mean by the institution? Because we are part of this, we are the university as a student. So it's so important. It's about roles, that people, do they understand their roles? Because SRCs co-lead with management. They co-lead, but they don't co-manage. And that's what we have to make clear to students as managers, that we don't co-manage with you. You take management decisions, but we co-lead with you. So you have to understand the vision of the institution and where we are actually going as an institution. And the institution won't be able to function, as Dr. Ntuli indicated, without the contribution of the SRC. At DUT, unfortunately, the gentleman is not here, Dr. Zwane, who now works at MUT. He was a president at DUT at some point. And in the same year, when he was the president, he became one of the, in actual fact, the best accounting student. In the same year, okay? Today he has a PhD, and he is Dr. Zwane. He was there at DUT, by the way, yeah. So it's possible, it can happen. But we shouldn't take lightly what the SRC is going through when it comes to providing support to students and serving the interests of students. Too much for a student. And the question is, what is the institution doing in order to support the SRC, providing academic support? And because of the tension maybe between the SRC and management, we tend to create a distance. Say, these are just disruptive people that are there. We don't provide the support that we need to provide. Because particularly student governance, say student affairs, we should know that these particular students enrolled on this course, engineering, and there's a relationship between student governance and the dean or the HOD, and then you are updated about progress when it comes to this particular student. There's a lot that I can say, but for now, let me give this chance to other people. Thank you.
Yeah. Do I have any take at this side? All right. There is one. No. Okay. What we are getting is that to achieve institutional objectives in the context of the SRC, we have to support the SRCs. That is one thing we are getting from there. Let's see. Let me take it back to the panel members, given that there is no one this side.
Thank you very much. Let me welcome the input from the floor regarding the support that the SRC requires so that they succeed in achieving their goals. But there's also one thing I need to mention here, that in a stakeholder structure, every stakeholder, while representing his constituency group, but there's a primary goal for every stakeholder, which is the sustainability of the university, which is development and progress in the university, whether you're SRC member or any other representative of any stakeholder that exists. So that should also find expression, and it should also be taken into account at all times. That if I raise a particular if I'm a representative of students and I raise a particular concern or demand, is it in the best interest of the institution? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can the panel members take it?
Thanks. And I think post my time in the SRC and having reflected when I got the invite to come here, was also pondering on the question around what does supporting the SRC actually look like? And many a times when you go into institutional offices, you will find a number of support staff. And I think, Doc, in one of our sessions when we did the interview, one of the things that I have seen is that the SRC is handled differently from any other office in most institutions. And that is also primarily because of different ways of relating. But I think SRCs, from my point of view, in terms of providing support, would be to start to look at SRCs as professional bodies within the institution that contribute to the overall vision of the institution. Many a times the SRC would get packs for the different council meetings, for the different meetings within the institution. And many a times that conflicts with some of the academic work that you need to do. And I think everyone here equally understands that the role of the SRC is firstly to be students themselves. But when you then look at that aspect of saying that I'm going to be a student first, what then do you contribute to the university except for you are just contributing to pass, which is the main objective as to why you are there. But in your capacity as SRC, it's almost like you are made to choose between being an SRC member and being a student. And I think most times we should look at how do you equip the SRC to contribute to the university in such a way that it enriches some of the policies that come out of the university for the betterment of the universities. And perhaps it's to even look at, I think I was speaking to you, Prof, some of the proposals that SRCs bring into Senate may not find expression, not because they don't have the content, but because of maybe how they are delivered. And the question then is, are SRCs supported in writing proposals for the universities? Because SRCs have a lot of insights into what some of the challenges that students experience, but may not always have the time to write down proposals that find expression within different university forums that would allow those decisions to be made. And I think it's really looking at providing support staff to the to the SRC. And sometimes, obviously, the SRCs would then say, these people are hired by management. But I think that argument moves far, it moves far beyond just a relationship of we are SRC and this is management. It really speaks to having a relationship that speaks to building the university from both aspects, and that starts with ensuring that there is support staff to the SRC.
Maybe Prof. Chikoko, before you respond, I do want to draw from what Dr. Mthunu said. Dr. Mthunu, you have made a point that the SRC is not just a structure that exists in isolation. There's quite a number of other structures that students, some who are in the SRC, would have led from before they become SRCs. Prof, taking also from what Akona is saying, should we then be saying, before you get to the SRC, so that we don't spend time teaching you how to develop those proposals, you might have demonstrated that you have went through all those other structures that are within the institution?
Well, to start with, I support the foundational argument that for one to get into the SRC, they must be of satisfactory, in the minimum, of academic standing. Not simply for them to be able to pass their degrees, but also for them to be able to contribute constructively to the goings on in the institution. If you can't do that, like Dr. Ntuli is saying, what leadership are you going to provide? So I argue that that should be the starting point. And yes, I agree with Doc there to say we must think outside the box about how these are young people largely, and they can't be expected to have tons and tons of wisdom. Where would they have got it? So we have to provide that support continuously. And of course, the SRC, the leaders in general, must be prepared to learn, because sometimes the preparedness to learn is not there. But I want to ruffle the feathers of the SRC a bit. And I spoke to you earlier. Here is my challenge to the SRC. I spoke about resources. Of course, the entire thing is around the distribution of these resources. Most students are sponsored by NSFAS. The SRC is almost entirely talking to students represented by NSFAS. The students who pay fees are kind of below the radar of the SRC. The SRC has no agenda for those students. And so there is an impact to institutional wellness, because those students don't feel a sense of belonging, because the discussions are all about money from NSFAS and how it is going to work. The students who pay, if they said anything, I'm not sure you can answer for yourself how much you listen to such students, but I want to say that there is need for this institution to be healthy. The SRC must look at other corners of the institution, including those who are not necessarily NSFAS.
I give it to you, yes, to maybe try and take from all the voices and provide a response, a student voice, as someone who represents the students. And you do not have to agree, or you can even ask further questions to the panel members or to the people that are here.
Yes, I'm coming with questions, but not necessarily questions. Now, I forgot your. It's Dr. Mkhun was talking about all other supporting structures from the university, of which I did not quite get which are those supporting structures. But where I am is that most of the time, once the SRC has entered the office fully, but by full I mean inaugurated, now the structures of the university deem that SRC as fit now to take on the duties to represent the students. As to say, if I get inaugurated today, they can call a meeting tomorrow for me to attend. Yet I don't know anything about those meetings. It's like taking me and say, go attend a council meeting. Yet I don't know what are the procedures of those meetings. How do I contribute towards that agenda that I'm being given? Sometimes you get an agenda of about 1,500 pages. Yet you must contribute towards that agenda. But you have not been given a proper and thorough induction. Now, going forward, I wish to see, structures of the university giving induction to the SRC. Not just only induction about the office. Capacity building, it's very important. And by capacitating us, it means that you care about our engagements. Because when you are the head of what is this thing? Student governance, is because here in DOT we are under the wing of student governance. You ought to see the what is this thing? I forgot. Oh, you ought to see the strengths and weaknesses of each individual, of which you must know each and every one of us, the personality of each and every one of us, because we don't adapt like in the same way. We are not fast learners, all of us. You can come forward and then you say it's an induction. You tell us what to do, you tell us the procedures. But what then do you do after that? You just leave the room. You don't go to us one by one as to say we have sense of understanding of what has been, engaged in a meeting.
Thank you, President. Dr. Mkhunu, I think there is a broad question that we further need to ask from the President's response to even say, now when they are in there, if they do not have experience in the other structures, do we bring them there just for window dressing to say they are there, given that they have to juggle with all these agendas they are not equipped to deal with in their entire term? Do they get to a point where they are actually now contributing to what the university is expecting them to contribute? Because of time, I want to take it back to the author, Dr. Mthethwa, to just give us something that she takes from the panel, but also something that maybe all of us, we can take and say, we want to think about as we live. I wanted us to say more, but the time is really against us.
Thank you very much. I must say, President, I was very impressed by what you've said, because that's one of the things, actually, the institution that I worked at when I started my research was the issue. And I remember having sat with the SRC where we went through a process of induction, but then I thought, but that induction, as you rightfully say, was one that we were just telling the SRC about our different offices. That is not sufficient. Actually, what is needed is that the SRC must have mentorship, ongoing, regular mentorship at least once a month, so that they are kept involved and also taught as to the going-ons of the university. That's one thing. The second thing, which I actually do mention in my book, is the issue around when the SRC come to their first meetings. Actually, each of those first meetings, SRCs ought to be given a platform so that we hear from them first before we expect them to go through the 1,000 pages. And the SRC president actually is reminding me, just on Saturday we had council, and they were attending council for the first time. And the two of them with the Secretary General kind of sat there in their corner, and I just wondered, you know, because they're sitting there, most of the conversation they're really not party of. We've soon enough, except for welcoming them to their first meeting, that was it. Otherwise, there wasn't much that they could actually contribute to. And as he says, there wasn't anything that they could say because they probably, the 1,000 pages, they didn't understand what was going on. And maybe, even if they did, they would be intimidated by the rest of council as we continue with our business. So probably one of the things that needs to happen, the first engagement that they come in, firstly, somebody must coach them before they go in. And then when they go in, they must also be given the platform, because it's just a two-way streak. It's actually not about us trying to make the best of the university by what we do on our day-to-day basis. But it's also about us listening to the students, so whatever we hear from them, because at this point, they're still very, as they say, wet behind the ears, so there's an opportunity to actually hear them without the exposure as to what they think as SRC they wish to achieve. Because if council has heard that, then even our own narrative will change. The last point that I just wanted to make was that, which I'm very pleased that DUT has taken that route. Ultimately, we approved in June of this year that the SRC's tenure is extended, because 1 year is not sufficient. They get into office in October. January, there's all this mayhem with the student registrations. That's what they're very busy with. By the time they kind of get in and get sort of familiar with what's going on, it's June. And then again, by June, July, there's a next cycle of SRC contestation. And then they're out. Or we say to them in July, you go to an international benchmarking program, but you're going to go to that program. When you come back, you can't implement whatever you've seen because you're now out because somebody else is in. So we've now extended as DUT the SRC tenure to 2 years, so that there's that allowance for mentorship. I think extending that period allows us to have time to mentor the students about their roles and actually help them to grow them to be leaders. Okay? I must say, and I must thank you, President, in this audience. More recently, we were about to do exams at DUT. And there was lots of tension in my office, and my team, one of my directors is sitting over there at the back. We had sleepless nights about the fact that we heard that the students, a small group of students, were going to influence the stopping of the exams. Now, when you stop exams, it means that the students suffer because the following year they can't get funding for NSFAS because they didn't pass. But the university also suffers because even our income, because our throughput is also affected. So we engaged with the SRC. They're very new. I think they're barely 3 months old in office. We engaged with them, and together we're able to stop the potential strike that was to happen. If that strike had happened, probably I could be fired because of my job, because they will strike and they'll hit the buildings as soon as they damage the buildings, which goes back to what Professor Chikoko was talking about. The damaging of buildings is no longer about the university can fix what is damaged, because there's a specific budgets, which budgets have been cut. So you now no longer have money to repair. For example, we've just recently had our libraries bashed, the windows were bashed, and here's my other director there, we had to fix. We had just fixed, and we had hardly a month break of fixing, we had to refix. How much money, how long can you stretch the funds that you have? You can't. But in short, I'm very pleased, and I really want to appreciate the panel members this afternoon. I'm really just, it's a pity that our time has run out, but just to thank you for being here, thank you for your interest, and thank you for your contribution this afternoon. But yeah, this conversation, we can go on forever, but thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you, panel members, and thank you, Dr. Mthethwa, again. Dr. Mthethwa, I need guidance from you. I haven't met the person on the program, Ms. Kubai, who is doing the vote of thanks.
She's right here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I've been looking at you all the time. I please welcome you to the podium and to doing the thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much for that welcome. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hlamarisa Kubai. I'm here to do the vote of thanks, but I'm told that there is good news, and that good news comes in a form of a lucky draw. So I would like to just allow Dr. Mthethwa the opportunity to just go through the lucky draw and hope that one of you is getting something.
Okay, just very briefly. We gave you scrolls when you entered. Those scrolls have numbers. So if you could just look at the scrolls. Actually, if you read the scroll, it has some messaging from the book itself. But if your number is pulled, then we've got 4 lucky draws for my book. I'll just pick a number, and then whoever's got that number can come and get. Number 25.
I think it's me.
It's not you, is it? It's you. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you planned this. Congratulations. Thank you. Number 12. Number 12. Yay! Thank you. Number 1. Number 1. Okay, and then the last one. Don't know. Number 7. Number 7. Number 7. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, I'm done.
Okay. I'm sure people are already thinking that it was rigged. I had no idea it wasn't planned. If there are auditors in the room, then you can check what transpired there. So thank you so much for the lucky draw. I would just like to mention that the people online, the topic will be exhausted at some point. We obviously have to just continue the program and fast track where we are at because there is another event taking place on this specific venue. So the topic will be continued. Thank you so much. And as I'm here to give a vote of thanks on behalf of Dr. Mthethwa, I would like to really express my sincere gratitude for your presence at this launch. It's really been an honor, I think, for all of us just to be here surrounded by greatness. Who is Dr. Mthethwa here? She represents such greatness, and you can see it as well in how she has passion for this specific topic, which is linked to youth development. And thank you to each and every one of you for taking time from your busy schedules just to be here today. Dr. Mthethwa greatly values your presence and support, and she wishes to express her gratitude to the following people. The first one that she wishes to express her gratitude to is Professor Andries van Aarde in his absence, and the team at AOSIS for their guidance, support, and for ultimately including Dr. Mthethwa's book in their extensive library publication. So thank you so much to Professor Andries van Aarde and the team at AOSIS in their absence. And then she would also like to take the opportunity to hand over gifts to the following individuals as a token of appreciation. Yes, and the first one will go to Dr. Diane Moodley for facilitating the inclusion of this book launch to be incorporated in their current conference, as well as working with Dr. Mthethwa's office with the logistical arrangements. Thank you, Dr. Moodley. Thank you. And the next one goes to our very own Ms. Nokuthula Hlengwa, who is Dr. Mthethwa's PA. Ms. Nokuthula Hlengwa has tirelessly coordinated this launch. And she made sure that Dr. Mthethwa is ready for today, acknowledging specifically that the entire planning and organization was done during Dr. Mthethwa's sick leave. So well done, Tuli, for that. The next gift of appreciation goes to Mr. Abatakali Nenungwi, who moderated the online participation. And as we continue, Dr. Mthethwa will also like to extend gratitude to the panel members. And I will just mention all the panel members: Dr. Thokozisi Ntuli, Professor Vitalis Chikoko, Ms. Akona Landu, and Mr. Solomzi Zoleka for their acceptance of the invitation to participate as panel members and their valuable contribution in this session. Let's give them a hand. Yes, please, if you can just maybe come through so that... Okay, great. So the photos will be done afterwards. And then the next one is none other than the panel facilitator, Professor Phumlani Myende, whose value extended beyond really the assignment of this role as the panel facilitator, bringing his own experience as an ex-SRC member. Thank you, Professor Myende. Yes, and then last but not least, special thanks goes to Professor Cheryl Potgieter, who today was not only as a program director, but as a book sponsor through the Research and Doctoral Leadership Academy. She supported Dr. Mthethwa from conception stage, encouraging that Dr. Mthethwa take up the challenge to publish this book. Thank you, Professor Sharon. Yes, yeah. Thank you. And yes, we'll do that. And it would be a great injustice not to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Mthethwa's family members. They're sitting right over there, and we really appreciate your presence. We appreciate that you've graced us with your presence today. They're sitting over there and that side. I believe that these are the people that actually felt all the emotions of book writing. So they can tell us what Dr. Mthethwa was like when she was low through the book writing and when she felt her highs. So we really appreciate you gracing us with your presence today. Thank you so much.
And of course, last but not least, your gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there is announcements once again. There is logistical announcements. And yeah, just the final one. Thank you, Dr. Mthethwa, who made this possible. I believe, and I won't close until I've said this, I believe that this book was fueled by your passion for youth development and the inclusion of the youth, not only at the institutional level, but the community at large. May your journey continue to flourish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for gracing this very prestigious occasion. It's such a spectacular book launch that just took place. We thank you for your presence. Please, can I ask you to help yourself to some cocktails? There are soda and virgin cocktails available for you to order with the waiter who will come around. But also at 6 o'clock, there is an alcoholic beverages also available for you at 6 o'clock. But one very, very, very important announcement is that you will find that there's very delicate fine art all over the place, including on the floor. So please tread gently as you enjoy this, this time of meeting with each other, engaging, and just having a good leisure time together. Thank you so much.
But you know, it ended when we were not reaching in the peak.
Yes, but you know, the schools are not university people. A lot of them are working from outside, like family and friends. So I think it's yes, I understand the issue that, you know, we need to sort of engaging. But I think for them it was also good because they not the academics. They came for
yeah.
the speeches and I think what important.
I think the seminar idea is a good idea.
Thank you.
And if you want,
Yes, yes.
so that we take less.